Welcome everyone. I'm glad that you can make it here. Hope you had an awesome weekend. And one of the things that occurred to me today is how do you address an audience on YouTube? Because really everything I've seen so far just kind of sounds, I don't know, weird. Hello YouTubers, stuff like that. So I almost want to say hi fellow tech enthusiasts. Maybe that's a good word for it. I don't know. We'll figure something out. If anyone has any great ideas, feel free to pop them there in the chat. And if you just jumped on at any point later on or come back down at the bottom there where you see that little scrolling ticker, those are the topics that I have lined up, and it's kind of a reminder to me and a preview to other people if they happen to browse here, they can see what's on the agenda. So first of all, got to ask you a question. Fidget spinners, have you had enough yet? Are you tired of them? Do you love them? Are you making a collection? Because guess what? They just took it one step further. That's right. There is now a leak on the Apple phone. So I actually skipped that. So they have a mobile phone that is a spinner now. So if you thought they were going away, I think it's going to be a while before we see them disappear. Now, I know that there are some good uses for these. They can be therapeutic. A lot of people find that they have a calming effect from them, and I'm not knocking them in any way. It's just kind of crazy to me how fast they exploded, and then the market became completely saturated at a certain point. Now you can get them practically for free. In fact, I went to order something the other day online, and it came with the free fidget spinner, and it had nothing to do with fidget spinners. So I have a feeling there's tons of these overstocked. But the key, of course, is if you're going to sell something and you want to stand out, you know, in a marketplace that's got just tons and tons of options, you do something different. Well, here it is. It is a mobile phone spinner. Now, let me pull up the specs because I actually have a little more information about this that I wanted to read off. And this is from The Verge. So the screenshot that you see right there is actually from the same article that I'm looking at right now. But there's another post on firstpost.com, and it's a tech site. And what they're saying is that a Hong Kong-based company called Chilli, that's Chilli, so double L in the middle there. Chilli International launches world's first fidget spinner feature phone. Now, obviously, it doesn't look like there's much of a display on this. There's not going to be a lot of room for that if you're holding a spinner fidget in your hand, but it actually works. You can make calls on this thing. It's powered by a 280 milliamp hour battery, and of course you wouldn't need much battery for something that small. Comes with expandable memory up to 8 gigabytes. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but still, you know, remember this is something that you can spin in your hand. It does offer multimedia options, so you can get video, images, and music along with the internet, and of course call people, you know, if you want to look like you're on the Zoolander phone, of course. So this will be interesting to see. It is going for sale in India, apparently. I don't know if and when it's going to make it to the US. It will be very interesting if it does. But there you go. If you're looking for something different, I think it'd be safe to say that probably not too many people have a spinner fidget phone. Now I'm going to jump back here to the stream for just a second before I go into this next article. This one is the one that let's see, I think I have a few things out of order here. So there was something that popped up, and I actually retweeted this, even though I'm somewhat opposed to misleading article titles. So when you read this at first, it says Apple leak reveals massive new iPhone cancellation. Well, obviously that's a bit clickbaity. Apple is not going to cancel a whole bunch of iPhones. And unfortunately, Forbes, who I think was a lot more reputable with their articles in the past, has become, I don't know what a good word for it is, but slightly misleading sometimes when it comes to publishing their headlines. So what they're talking about here is Apple's move away from the Touch ID system. So according to this article, and they have this gentleman, what is his name here? I need to find it real quick. There is a guy who is supposed to know everything about Apple and their products, you know, before it actually hits the mainstream media or anything else like that. And what he said is that Apple has committed to facial recognition to a point where they are going to completely do away with Touch ID after the iPhone 8. So again, allegedly, and according to this article, I don't want to spread any information, but it wouldn't surprise me if they decided to be courageous and just completely put all of their investment into this new facial recognition system, which is, I mean, granted, we haven't even really seen it. We've seen demonstrations of it, but until the iPhone 10 comes out, we really don't know what the success or the reception is going to be to the public. We know that there are a certain number of people who will love whatever Apple makes and a certain number of people who won't touch any of their products. But in between is what we were really concerned with, because that's where the majority of the potential consumers for Apple products lie. And what's interesting to me is that, personally, I can say from an objective position, I could care less either way, whether it's Touch ID, facial recognition, or anything else, because personally, as long as I have the option to enter a passcode, that's what I'm sticking with. I have my reasons for doing that. I don't find it that inconvenient. And, don't call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, but I don't think there's any reason I need to store my Touch ID in a device that communicates with a server in a remote location. So for that reason, I've chosen to go with the password. Now, I know that there are some people, and estimates say that about 15% of Apple users actually use the Touch ID feature. And I can imagine that, whether it's an iPhone or Galaxy phone or anything else that has a fingerprint scanner in it, if that's what you use and it's become convenient, it's probably very nice to be able to just reach out, touch your phone, and it starts working. And of course, the concern here from a skeptical point of view is that if you have to hold your phone in front of your face every time you want to unlock it, you could, I mean, I guess I would assume there's a bypass to that. You can just punch in your code down here. But, the examples they gave were like, what if you're at a board meeting and you want to check your phone, but you can't raise it up above the table because then it brings attention to it. You might be in a movie theater or something else like that, and imagine trying to scan your face in a dark environment like that, and how annoying it would be to people around you. So to add the facial recognition feature sounds like a good move for people who would want that in a phone. But for those that are used to using Touch ID, and I put this question out there to anyone, in the audience or anyone who comments later on, how would you feel about having Touch ID removed from your iPhone and replaced with facial recognition, and having that be the only biometric option that you have for unlocking your phone? We'll have to see. Hey, Beha, how's it going? Good to see you here. So I don't know. Time will tell, obviously, whether or not this rumor turns out to be true. And if we get rid of Touch ID altogether, there are some reasons for those of us within the industry for phone repair who would love to see Touch ID go away. But of course, we are equally concerned with how facial recognition is going to affect our ability to service our customers and replace their screens and other components inside the phone. So ultimately, will this be built into another part of the phone, maybe on the back, maybe on the screen, somewhere else, or will Touch ID just completely go away? We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. But I'm really interested to see what happens. And, I'm just going to throw this out there as my prediction. If Apple does go ahead with the idea of completely getting rid of Touch ID and replacing it with facial recognition, I believe that at least short term, that's going to lose some customers. I think overall it is a bad decision. Maybe having both of those features available for a while and trying to transition from one to the other and see how people respond to it. But to just pull the plug on Touch ID and replace it with facial ID, I don't know. I'm really skeptical to see how that goes, and I can see it going bad for them. All right, so next thing, is metal really better than plastic? I saw this article, and this is on AndroidCentral.com, and they were kind of just debating, how much better is a metal phone over a plastic phone? And I also see that I need to move this. Where do we go? Is it this one? Nope, that's not it. That needs to go down. There we go. All right, so yes, I'm an amateur. I'm still learning how to use this software, but I will get it dialed in eventually. In fact, I'm changing this whole format probably in the next week or so. So just kind of experimenting today. Plastic versus metal on a phone. Oh, and by the way, while I'm doing that, I really need to pop out the chat because I will not be able to see your comments unless I do, because they are currently not visible. So give me half a second here while I pull this up. And, one of the things that really struck me when I first picked up a Galaxy S4, if you remember way back in the day, maybe before some people were born. When I first picked up a Galaxy S4, one of the things that I noticed was, and I was going from a Motorola Droid. If you remember that little slider phone that was made out of metal, I mean, it was really solid. In fact, they made an R2D2 version, which was really cool. I have a video on my channel of that. Wish I had bought one just because it's a collector's item at this point. But that old slider Android Motorola original Droid phone for Verizon, that thing was a brick. I mean, it was small, but it was heavy. And the first time I picked up a Galaxy S4, which if I remember had a slightly bigger display, actually probably a considerably bigger display, that thing felt like it was going to float out of my hand because it was so light in comparison to the phone that I was used to using. And one thing that people tend to do is when they buy something, they will often perceive the physical weight or the density of an item to correlate with its quality. And this is absolutely not true across the board. And if you want a good example, if you ever take a look at furniture nowadays, anything that is made out of real wood is going to, generally, with few exceptions, is going to weigh less than something that's constructed of particle board. Now, why am I giving you that analogy? Because when you build a phone, the fact that it's heavier than another phone does not obviously mean that it is better, right? Well, if you know what particle board is, or if you don't, here's a good explanation. Particle board, when you buy pre-assembled or that stuff in the package at an office supply store where you can put it together yourself at home, most of the time what you're getting is compressed wood fiber. So that entertainment center or desk that you might have gotten at IKEA or Office Depot or anywhere else that sells that kind of stuff, what that is basically is sawdust that's been swept up off of the floor and glued together. So the reason that those things are so heavy is because they're made out of glue. Now, obviously, a glued together bunch of sawdust is not better than a solid piece of wood in most cases. So because a phone is made out of metal, you would expect it to be slightly more durable, I think, if anything else, right? It's obviously going to be a little heavier, so when it does impact something, there's going to be more force behind it. But for the most part, I think from a from a technician's perspective, when we had plastic phones, if something that was plastic was broken, we would replace it. Whether it was the back battery door panel, the bezel, anything else that was made out of plastic, if it got chipped or cracked or broken, you just take it off and put a new one on there. When we come across something that's made out of metal, good example would probably be the iPhone 5. I know that they started the mid frame becoming metal with the iPhone 4, but with the iPhone 5, we actually have a shell that goes around the display on the edges. And that's problematic because when you drop your phone and it lands on that corner and gets dented, it's never going to be bent back into perfect position again. So of course you can always replace that entire part rather than trying to repair it or bend it back into shape. But the cost is obviously going to be a little higher when you're dealing with something that's made out of metal versus something that's made out of plastic. Now, in addition to that, you have almost across the board diminished the capabilities of the phone as far as anything that is, or at least presented some new challenges when it comes to wireless connections. The first example, of course, is going to be wireless charging. If your phone has a metallic back on it, your options for wireless charging are going to be limited. And when it comes to radio frequencies for your cell signal, your data signal, and your Wi-Fi, there are going to be some challenges, as we saw with the iPhone 4, basically. You remember, if you held the phone wrong, you didn't get a good signal because they have to get that signal through that metal mid-frame somehow, and that applies to any phone that is constructed of metal. Now, obviously, it has a more durable feel to it, but it is also heavier, and I always wonder if people walking around, with their phone held in front of their face, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but we have people doing that for extended periods of time. And if you've never done this experiment before, take something light like a 5-pound weight, or maybe even a 1-pound weight, and hold it out in front of you, with your arm fully extended, and see how long you can hold it there. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but over time it starts to feel like it's getting heavier and heavier because of the fatigue involved. So I wonder if that small difference in weight between metal phones and plastic phones has some overall effect in back and neck problems that we're seeing with people who are, walking around with their phones held in front of their face all day long. I don't know. Again, one of those long-term things that we'll find out about later on. So, metal phones, plastic phones, yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like when I pick up this iPhone 7 that it's heavier than the last phone that I used, which was my Galaxy, but it was a little heavy too. So, there's a new app out that will help detect a concussion. So this should be interesting. And a few months ago, I talked about another application that they were working on where you could basically, couples who are trying to get pregnant could measure something like sperm count using this application and some special adapter that plugs into their phone. Don't ask me to explain exactly how it works, but apparently it does. Now they have a new way to use your phone's camera to detect concussions, which is awesome, especially if you're involved in sports in any way, and could be revolutionary, really, the way that we view spectator sports now. Instead of having a doctor on the field at all times, you could have someone with a phone who could take this application, hold it up to someone's face, and it would use your camera, the camera in the phone, and some sort of artificial intelligence that they're talking about, and decide whether or not you have signs indicating a concussion. Now, these are things that are not perceptible to the human eye. So someone couldn't just come and look at you and tell if you can have a concussion right off the bat. Typically they'll send you home and have someone wake you up every, I think it's half hour or hour to make sure you don't, because in the short term, it's very difficult to tell when you have brain bleeding without some extensive tests taking place. Apparently this app is supposed to be able to detect that just by pointing your phone's camera at your face, which is amazing. So put down the tricorder, Dr. McCoy, because now all you have to do is carry your phone around, and I have a feeling we're just going to see more and more breakthroughs like this, where you can use your smartphone to figure out if there's something wrong with you or someone else. I mean, it's a pretty amazing time that we live in. Next, we have, this is pretty crazy, drivers who kill may now face a life sentence. Yes, I want to pull up this article so that I can give you the details. And by the way, all of this information will be linked in the video description once this stream has completed. Where is my browser? Okay, are you really going to do that to me? Okay, here we go. So this is from The Guardian. Oh, let me flip this to over here, because fair use and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to stay on someone's webpage much longer than I need to. And obviously not show the entire content and accredit them. So theguardian.com/law, government to tighten sentences after consultation. So what they're saying now is that drivers who cause a death while they are driving using their mobile phones or speeding may face life in prison. So if you can imagine that, not unlike drivers who kill while under the influence of drinking or using drugs, you can also be charged and face life imprisonment if you kill someone while you are driving with your phone or operating your phone while it's in your hand in your car. And this is really, I don't want to say good. I mean, we definitely don't want people to be killing other people with their cars, but it raises so many questions because when you think about it, first of all, we know that certain types of legal consequences are only effective up to a certain point. So within a discussion of this article, they linked to another study where someone had talked about how, we look at laws and why we have the penalties that we have. And what it came down to is that if you place some extreme sort of punishment for any type of crime, there are a few factors that go into making that punishment effective. And one of them is that the person who commits this crime has to realistically believe that they will be caught. And this is the main thing about this whole distracted driving thing. The phenomena of it will never happen to me is something that we haven't figured out how to fix yet. And it takes place in many different environments, many different situations where people say, yeah, I know that is a bad thing, but it's not going to happen to me. You could talk about people smoking cigarettes or practicing unsafe sex or, any number of other things. Why do people speed? If we know that going over the speed limit is against the law, why do we see so many people still doing it? Well, the number one reason is the person who is committing that offense probably does not think that they will be caught. And in that case, if they are caught, the consequences are not that severe in most of the time. You're looking at a fine, you're looking at some financial loss, your insurance premium may go up. But, aside from that, the consequences aren't that severe. Now with this, the potential to face life in prison if you commit one of these crimes and someone's killed in the process, obviously is very serious. But again, you have to question whether or not the person committing that crime or that offense realistically believes that they will be caught. And I think in most cases, it is, again, that thing where people think, well, not me. I'm not going to cause an accident. I'm not going to get caught. Therefore, this really doesn't apply to me. This is for everybody else out there. Well, until it happens to you, of course. And that's where people tend to change their opinions and go and do motivational speeches and tell people, hey, you should learn from me. And I really don't know if there's a solution to that, but it's very unfortunate, obviously, that people would have to die for that message to get across to people. But apparently they're taking it very seriously over there. The other thing is that the study that I was reading said is that, in addition to people having the perception that they will be caught committing this crime, the punishment has to be swift, and it has to seem fair. So if a criminal is caught doing something, and aside from punishment, we want to discourage them from committing that offense again in the future, we have to do two things. We have to get them quick justice. They have to go to court right away. They can't sit in jail waiting, or be out on house arrest, or whatever, waiting for weeks or months until they actually go to court. And also, when they are sentenced, it has to be something that is perceived as being fitting for the crime for them to take it seriously. If you say, hey, if you get caught doing this, you're going to get 900 years in prison. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And if you get caught doing something very serious and you get a slap on the wrist, well, then again, you have the same effect. The person who is considering or is committing that offense really doesn't take the consequences seriously. And the example that they gave was piracy. The RIAA has all sorts of lawsuits where they're suing people for millions of dollars because they downloaded some song off of whatever kind of file trading software they might have. But the thing is, people are still doing it. Why? Because no one really takes that stuff seriously, because they've made it so extreme that it just seems ridiculous. And when you tell someone you may face life in prison for something, it's going to be difficult for them to really comprehend and understand that applies to them, despite all these other things that would kind of prevent them from going along with it. It's kind of crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Software should be altered to not let you drive and use the phone. I think the service provider should be responsible. That's Beha. You think the service provider should be responsible for building that software in? I am assuming that's what you mean. And I'm wondering if it's going to be and this could really happen, obviously. There could be a point in time where they say that you cannot sell a phone in the US unless it has some sort of preventative software built into it to keep you from texting and driving or talking on your phone while you're driving. And I wonder if that would be the responsibility of the manufacturer of the phone or of the carrier who sells the phone, or whoever it is. That will be interesting to see. But I could see that happening, at some point in time where they just say, right now in California, if you are selling wireless devices, they must have the equivalent of a kill switch, which is obviously the iCloud with Apple, factory reset protection on Android, and so forth. You cannot sell a phone in California without that software built in. So if this is something that saves lives, maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing, to legislate and tell people, yeah, if you're operating a vehicle. And how does that work, though? Here's the catch, Beha, and this is the same thing that kind of went through my mind is, yes, something needs to be done. The real question, I think, is how do we do it? Because if you're driving your car and you have a passenger, the first things that come to mind would be velocity. You could control whether or not someone operates their phones based on how fast they're moving. And we see that in Waze. It pops up and says, oh, you can't use this unless you're a passenger, and then you click passenger. Would it work the same way with something like this? If you want to keep people from texting and driving or talking and driving, obviously it would be really tough to sell it as, well, we're going to lock out anyone in your vehicle when it's moving, from using their device, right? So how to differentiate between the driver and anyone else who is in the vehicle is going to be the real question that's going to be difficult to solve, I think, and obviously someone who really wants to do something like this, to operate their phone while they're driving, is probably going to be able to find a way around it if there are, backdoors or loopholes, so to speak of. Maybe they carry an extra phone with them or who knows what. So, regardless of the responsibility, I think the real question is, how would you make that happen? Is it possible? And I know a lot of people out there going, this is ridiculous. Not me. I like to use my phone while I'm driving. I got to tell you, it's really crazy. I've seen some really sad things happen to people that thought they were immune to this. And I hope that it never happens to anyone of you, for sure. There's too much bad stuff going on right now. Okay, I wanted to skip to this one. Oh, actually, I wanted to take a quick look at this right here and kind of give an explanation to everyone. Last week I had a lot of stuff going on, so fortunately we did not have to evacuate, but really seeing the effects of an insane forest fire, or fires I should say. There were several of them going on. I'm not too far from Napa right now, and I hope that if any of you are in that area or Santa Rosa or have relatives there, I hope you're all okay and got out or are safe at the very least. We just had crazy wildfires going on in Napa for pretty much all of last week. And because of that, the air quality here, which is something that I had not thought too seriously about. You know, we know that there are refineries and exhaust and all kinds of stuff going into the air. But on top of that, if you've never seen this before, and I hadn't, we had ash that was blowing in what they call, I want to say, small particulates from this fire, from what was left over, blowing down into where we live. And it was at the point where people were walking around wearing masks on their faces, and they were advising everyone to stay indoors and saying that if you were for your children and elderly people, it was particularly hazardous, and that basically no one should be outdoors exercising. You know, I've never seen anything like that before, so I consider myself fortunate for this to have been the first time that I had to really worry about going outside. There's a website, I think it's airaqi.gov. I'll look that one up and I'll put that down in the video description also. But it will tell you at any given time what the air quality is in your location based on your zip code. So this thing was telling us a few days ago that the air quality here was worse than the air quality in Beijing. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they are apparently known for having particularly unhealthy air outside. And we had even worse air here than that. So everyone's got their windows closed and for the most part staying inside. And it was really strange because you'd go somewhere in public where you would normally visit. You know, I had to go to the post office to drop off some mail. Empty, just ghost town. Nobody walking around in the street, hardly. It was really strange. But they are still fighting those fires right now. They're partially contained, but still there are some people who may be in danger. So hopefully everyone gets out of the way there in time. And I don't want to dwell on that, but it is right down the street, so I thought it was worth mentioning. So there is a new, what do we want to call this? If you use WPA, which pretty much everyone's device will connect to this kind of stuff, there is apparently an exploit now that they can use to get into wireless networks. And I am certainly not an expert on network technology, so I don't want to attempt to explain this. I'll put the link down below the video description. I'll put the link down below here so, in case you want to check it out. But long story short is this is affecting pretty much every operating system. So whether you have an iPhone, you have an Android, you are running a Linux machine, anything else. Let me get to the article here. This crack attacks, they basically figured out a way to break WPA encryption. And somehow what this thing does is it exploits the handshake that your device uses to connect to a Wi-Fi network, spoofs something, and somehow it basically gets your encryption key, is the best way that I can put it. Android and Linux can be tricked into reinstalling an all-zero encryption key. I assume if it's all zeros, there's really no key there. It's just a bunch of zeros. And they can use this to break into pretty much any kind of wireless device that connects to a network. So wherever you go, if you log into a Wi-Fi, and by the way, I'm really curious because I can say personally, for some reason, call me paranoid if you like, but when I go somewhere public that has an open Wi-Fi network available, I am very skeptical about connecting to that with my phone. And in most cases, I won't. I'll just use my network connection for it, unless I'm at someone's house or someone's business that I know and trust. Because my understanding of this is that if you go onto a public network, if you're at a Starbucks or McDonald's or a hotel or anything like that, and you use that free Wi-Fi, the protection level that you have for privacy and encryption is compromised quite a bit. And really, my understanding has always been that anyone who really wanted to could get into those networks. They're not really that heavily protected. So I tend to shy away from that. What is happening here, they say, for example, the HTTPS can be bypassed in non-browser software in iOS, OS X, Android apps, banking apps and VPN apps. So if you've ever had any doubts about whether or not you want to use a wireless network, there's a probably good reason why you should be skeptical about that. Okay, so I did want to pose a question. This is a question within a question here. I wanted to pose a question to you all because I really don't want to ignore people. Let's see, where is my screen capture? I have a browser on here somewhere. I may have to add it. Okay, let's do this. Let's pull this up. In any case, I'm looking at YouTube comments and attempting to add a browser capture source. Let's see if this will work. I don't like the fact that this thing resets itself every time I use it. It can be quite annoying. Will that do it? Nope, that will not do it. Okay, well, I guess I will just read it then. All right, so anyways, I try to answer every question that comes through on my channel, and sometimes I'm at a lack as to how to respond. There are quite a few technical questions. How do I get my phone to do this? How do I fix this? How do I replace it? Where do I buy it? What kind of tool do you use, etc. But the one that really gets me are the questions with incomplete information. So this one is, my iPad starts charging, but it says not charging over and over. I tried everything to fix, but it still doesn't work. Please help me. And outside of a response, really generic response like I need more information, I really don't know how to answer people. And I always wonder what, I've had questions like this that just say, my phone doesn't work. Please help me. And I'm really not sure what the correct response is to that. When someone's having a problem, but they don't really describe any of the details surrounding that problem, and they say, help me, I'm just really stumped at how to respond to that. How do you help someone without having all the information? To just go on and generically post on every comment, I can't help you until you give me more info over and over and over. I really hate to do that. But there are a few videos where I've actually done exactly that, where I saw the same question coming up over and over, and they were actually very specific questions like, will this work with this particular operating system? And the answer is no. Here are the operating systems that will work with, and you pin that comment to the top of the comment section, which, by the way, no one reads. So if you publish anything on YouTube, you're already familiar with this. People don't generally read the video description. They don't generally read the comments before they post a comment, or at least in many cases. So how do you get that information across to them? We have these little cards. Let's see, is it up here? It's up there. Well, it's up that way, in the corner somewhere, where you can post a little card with an exclamation point or an I or whatever that is, and occasionally people will pay attention to that, but not all the time. So YouTube has done away with annotations. So we used to be able to add these little chat bubble things, and you could go back after the fact and add a chat or a message or redirect someone to another video to answer their question, and you can't do that anymore, which kind of sucks. It's taken some of the functionality away. I guess the trade-off is we get to advance 10 seconds by double tapping on the screen. So I don't really know what to do with that one. Anyways, fidget spinner. Beha, are you selling a lot of fidget spinners? I'm curious to know if you're there still. Because the thing was, everyone should have fidget spinners in their stores a couple months ago. And then it kind of went to everyone has fidget spinners. We can't get rid of them. So I don't know if that's still... Where's my live control room? I don't know if that's still a thing. I believe fingerlings are the new deal, if you haven't actually heard of that already. Giving you 40 seconds to respond there. All right, so that was pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. I know this was a very short one. There's not a huge amount of excitement within new phone stuff this week. There should be next week, I believe, because it is the 16th. So yeah, we got the... Google Pixel coming out. It should be very interesting to see how the public responds to that one. I have to say that personally, without the wireless charging, I am not doing it. And I'm pretty sure they don't have infrared blaster built in on that one either. I know it's old school, but hey, garage door, TV, any TV you go anywhere in public, being able to control that, it's not only fun, it's actually entertaining sometimes if you're creative about it. In any case, let's see if we can get a still up here. I've got stuff all over the place. Where's my image? I did figure out how to do this, so that's kind of interesting. I'll leave the chat open for the next 5 minutes or so, and then I'm going to jump off. I've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up this week. I will be doing some more product reviews and some repairs. I've got an improved version of the Cohen over-the-air headphones, which are pretty awesome if you want people not to interrupt you while you're listening to your music. I had never really messed with anything outside of one time I flew in a helicopter and they had those things that go over your ear, and those are pretty cool because they do keep the helicopter sounds muffled for the most part, but these things are actually really cool. Be reviewing that. I've got another iPhone conversion I'll be doing, and then there was one more thing and it escapes me. I think it was Galaxy S5 active charge port replacement video I'm working on. Yes, you can do it without breaking the screen. Yes, it takes a bit of effort and time, but it can definitely be done, and I want to get that up there because I had a very difficult time finding any other S5 active charge port replacement videos. I did find one, and I will also link to that one to give the guy credit. He definitely helped me out through this, and that's something I want to start doing in the future. Anyone who contributes or any good sources that I have, I will credit them as a collaborator, if nothing else, in the video description. Thanks, everyone, for joining. It is awesome to come on here once a week. I will be back next Monday at 2 p.m. Kind of thinking about changing this to a later time of day. I know this isn't the best time for some people, but I will have to do some research and see, what actually works out. Is Monday the best day? Is it better to do it in the evening? I have a feeling it probably is because a lot of people are at work while this is going on. And at the same time, I have a few challenges here that I have to work around doing a live stream in the evening, but I will do some experimentation and see how that works out. That is it for me. I will check in with you again next week, and I'll have a new video up, if not today, most likely on Wednesday. I think this thing is going to publish. Thanks for joining. I will talk to you later.